By watching or listening to this show, you are acknowledging that you are of legal age to purchase and consume cannabis in your region. This production is for adults only. This is the Business of Cannabis, a joint venture between the Green Generation Co. and the Cannabis 101 podcast. Bringing you the latest bud-biz-buzz.
Looking forward to chatting with the wanderer, Malka Labell, on the Business of Cannabis. Of course, you can find her at www.greengencompany.com and find out how Malka can help you. As Malka, you are back in Alberta. I don't know if you were the one that brought the snow back with us, because we got dumped on in Edmonton this past weekend. We got green grass now that I'm looking at. It's starting to melt away. But what's it like being back in Alberta after so much time that you spent out in BC? I thought you were taking up permanent residence.
So was I. I wanted to. That's for sure. It was gorgeous in British Columbia. Oh my gosh, the scenery everywhere was unreal. I'm happy to be home and sleeping in my own bed and with my stuff around me, but the rest of this world is just, I don't know what to call it. We're in bizarro times. Different things, rules, lockdowns, people that are sick that weren't before. It's been really bizarre the last few weeks. I have to say, it's been weird.
Yeah, it's and unfortunately, we're back in that kind of phase one again, and hopefully, as we go, more people will get vaccinated, and we can certainly push on through this and get out and enjoy some cannabis, which is a new dirty word. Cannabis and hemp. That's what we're going with in the lead here. Why is cannabis and hemp the new dirty words?
They're dirty because people don't understand what they mean or have the positive benefit. They don't understand the positive benefits to them. They still think that they're a big box of unknown, Pandora's box. I think that was the explanation. So what this is that this has been essentially a summary of my journey through trying to find funding, access to money, or just trying to clear hurdles for my clients. So this is essentially a cumulative summary of working with cannabis related, or entirely hemp-based companies since 2018, and I feel like I've hit every single roadblock that you could possibly find, and having to navigate around them has been like almost impossible, because every other opportunity, so to speak, I've either already figured it out that it's not a possibility, or for some other reason it's a no-go. So this is a summary of the dirty things that people think cannabis should not be allowed to do. So the summary is, don't use that word, cannabis or hemp, in anything that you're doing as it interfaces with governments, funding, banks, etc. What I've learned is that the better words, so I wanted to be solution oriented in this talk, because it's been a painful, I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall of every conversation and losing my voice sometimes just because I'm explaining it so many times over. So the better words are sustainable, green, plants, agra-related, but don't use the word cannabis or hemp at all. Basically, anything when I've talked about what it means to be green, any of those then are better pseudonyms than cannabis or hemp in this case. And really, this has to do with the conservative style or conservative nature of different people that grant funding. So like COVID relief, for example, COVID relief regional benefits, banks. We talked about some of these before. So here's my solution and how I uncovered this. One of the first groups that I talked to that essentially said this is the problem, is that if you call it cannabis, you're going to get blackballed everywhere. And that was Lindsay Blackett from the Tabor Grasslands Collective. Now, Lindsay formerly was an MLA. So he was in government before getting into the cannabis industry. So he knew that, sort of going in, that if you talk about things that people don't know about, they're just going to say no. And so they developed the Tabor Grasslands Collective, which is essentially, collaborative. So they even didn't even use cooperative, because that's actually a legal entity. So collaborative was their workaround in that space. So they are essentially an agra business, both indoor and outdoor cannabis research facility in Tabor. And they're working with a research facility in order to do the work that they're doing. So they got funding from a research agricultural perspective. I got a denial letter from Alberta Innovates on a hemp-based product line, my hemp buyer solutions thing that I'm working on. And even though the application was solid, like we have really good customer demand, there's a lot of people interested in that product. As soon as the word hemp was involved, or cannabis offset or cannabis waste product, anything related, even though our application was completely solid and we were told this is amazing, this is going to go through by everyone in the system, as soon as it came up against people that didn't know what cannabis and hemp could do other than just get high with, as soon as they saw it, denied. And we're talking about a $10,000 micro voucher from Alberta Innovates, which you think would be a little bit of an easy sell for them, but no, denied. MyTax is another one. They're a group of research group with the ethics board of the Research of Calgary, University of Calgary behind them. They said, sorry, they weren't sure what to do with this and from an ethics standpoint. So they denied. They did not want to go forward with our application. COVID relief, regional relief. So that's, again, Alberta-based funding, administered through Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, who I thought would be really, progressive and diversity, and we've got women in the table. Nope. Cannabis sativa was the ingredients in some of our products on the hemp business. Cannabis sativa next to it says hemp seed oil, because you could buy that at the grocery store and put it in your cooking. But because cannabis sativa was in one of the ingredients on our website, it's actually in several next to hemp seed oil, got denied from that one as well. That was COVID regional relief for a business that has a huge demand and a ton of awesome products, and the only thing stopping us is the cash flow situation. ATB denied everything that I had tried to get funding through them, even though they're the most progressive out of all of these institutions. And I've spoken to everybody in that company that has anything to do with, essentially with cannabis, and they explained it to me. They're like, they don't understand anything other than the group that we're talking about, and so therefore they don't have a way to navigate when the things don't fit in their mold. And so it has to do with your NIAX score, which is a banking code or an industry code that's assigned to your account when you get a cannabis, or when you get a bank account as a business. And if that NIAX code has something to do with cannabis, or your business is somehow related, even if you don't directly touch the plant, good luck ever changing that. So you might as well just stop now and start over, and do not use cannabis and hemp in any kind of communication with anyone that issues money, or even sometimes insurance, as we've heard before. And it's really what I found, the point of all this is that, particularly the Alberta government, this is not the same case in BC. BC is way more progressive, and that was the cool thing about that I learned along the way. The Alberta government has no interest in advancing anything around the science, technology, or innovation or having to do with hemp or cannabis. They're completely, it's not part of their mandate, and that's why is that it's trickling down to all of these things, because they're ultimately in control. So the only time it does come up for renewal is, guess what? When there's an election. Fortunately, we have one of those coming, maybe federally in the next year, maybe provincially, maybe even definitely in the municipality of Calgary. That's when politicians care about this stuff. So the message here is, go talk to your MLA, go talk to your MP as an individual, and tell them how cannabis has impacted your life positively, whether with economics, with jobs, with medicine that's not paid for by the government. Maybe having some more positive stories from individuals that have been positively impacted, talking to their MLA or MP directly. I think that's the only real way to change their minds, because as a government, they really don't care.
Yeah, well, I'd be shocked if we didn't see a different provincial government in this province after everything that's gone on, and not to turn this into a political show, but that is how you're going to get the message out, is you're going to have to talk to the people that are running and make them aware of this. And listen, I think it's, very smart for different companies to work around this with different words, but that's not a long-term solution. We have to keep talking. We have to keep putting pressure on people. We have to get this changed so that the institutions you were talking about do pay attention and don't run away and hide when it's something they don't understand. People fear what they don't understand in every walk of life. So while it's a workable solution right now, it's not sustainable, and we need to get that message out. And getting that message out is getting in the ear of the politicians, just like people got in the ear of the Liberals, and Justin Trudeau won the election, in my opinion. A big part of that was due to cannabis.
For sure. And just actually as a side note to just about the election piece, it's also really about the normalization from a proven economic standpoint. So one of the things we talked about is businesses in cannabis haven't made money yet at the bottom line, so that the people that lent them the money, like the government-backed funding and like the banks. So the banks are hurting because their timelines to return on investment were unrealistic. So they said to me, like, once we start seeing that the money is coming back and that the investments that they specifically made in the big companies that they set up comes back profitably, which we may never see because that's not how you properly make cannabis. That's part of the problem, is we have to stay in that cover of, we're working on this, but without having to interact with you until we've got it proven that we are successful overarchingly as an industry.
Yes. So yeah, so it certainly shows the work that we still have to do, but we know what we have to do. So that's at least one step ahead, as opposed to being like, well, how do we do this? Well, we know then the vehicle to create change. And speaking of change, let's move on to change makers and tell us why Code Peterson is the change maker this week.
Yeah, so I actually have never met Cody. I've only spoken with him through LinkedIn over messages, both publicly and privately. And basically, I call him a LinkedIn influencer. So he has quite a strong stance around cannabis from a medical and pharmacological background. He actually is a pediatric pharmacist and a medical cannabis professional and advocate and a student and educator. And his image right here of his teaching, giving a talk, this is to the fire department, I think in Pennsylvania or something. Or Maryland, yeah, so Baltimore, Maryland. So he gives talks to big institutional groups around cannabis, which is why I wanted to bring him up, because he's a scientist, he's a doctor, or actually he's not a doctor, he's a research, he's a PhD in pharmacy. So the point is that he's actually not a doctor, similar to Ruth Fisher and other people that have doctorates, like Dr. Earl Oliver is another example. They're not doctors, they're research doctors or PhDs, which means that their experience is on adding up research and then using that compounded research to show the efficacy of cannabis. And that's what he does. So he's been doing all this research for quite a while. And in this case, he started to use analogies. And we talked about how analogies can be really powerful to explaining things to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, because it relates it back to something that the individual who doesn't quite get it can understand, because it relates to something that they have an experience with. So the one example was he was talking about the analogy between the ECS, or the endocannabinoid system, and how little we actually understand about it, that helps grasp the complexity of cannabis, the plant, because plants hold the keys. So here's our analogy, the keys that are yet to be labeled to match the locks in our skyscraper bodies. So I love this analogy, and this is why I was totally embracing him this week, is because he's talking about how complex is a skyscraper with the number of doors that are in a building that big, like 30 stories or more. How many doors are in that place? And a janitor or someone that would have access to all those doors would have a big key ring, jingling around in their pocket, often characterized by many movies and things we've seen. There's a key that fits every lock, like before fobs, basically. And if you don't have the label to each key, you have no idea which lock that key is going to fit. So what he's saying here is that we know that there's a lock and key scenario between the endocannabinoid system and cannabis, the plant, and the endocannabinoid system is in every body, but we don't have the labels for all of the locks and keys that match. So we know overarchingly it works, but we just don't know the detailed, math or pattern or map or, labels that go with each of those things. And we don't know them yet because it was so early in the study of this, in like the 30 years since it was discovered by Raphael McCullough and various researchers. We still are so infantile in how we understand that system as a body system. And it will come with more understanding of that body system, which is the work that he does and puts out on LinkedIn, is great pictures of cellular structures and body systems and cannabinoid, chemistry. that kind of science from the body side of it, the ECS side of it, will be part of that answer. And he's doing it really well, nailing it with using analogies that are simple to understand. And I have here this is actually a meme that I made based on reading his stuff. It was so clear to me what he was talking about after reading his article that I came up with this one myself, which is stress plus imbalance plus released endocannabinoids. So those are the ones your body's release that can be supplemented with cannabis from the plant equals homeostasis. So this equation is a very simple math additive thing, is ultimately what we don't know yet, is that we recognize that there's a lot of stress in our life, hard to quantify, hard to determine what that is at any given point. Could just be a bunch of stuff on fire. Could be just you're having a bad day or something in between. And an imbalance is what every person experiences when they're not doing well. They're not chill. They're like all over the crazy, whatever. They're having a bad day. They're not stable in some way, shape, or form. And a release of endocannabinoids comes out of our body. So we make them ourselves, and the plant can supplement that. And the cumulative effect of that is homeostasis, good vibes, we're chilling. And that's the kind of meme and examples that I think really resonate with myself and help it explain it to people that maybe just don't have that much experience with that themselves.
Well, and the key example is just so great, because just like every key is unique to each door, or nowadays fobs or garage door openers, even in that sense, our endocannabinoid system is different for each person. And how you and I could share the same joint. Well, we wouldn't be sharing it these days, but we could smoke the same cultivar, right, and get a totally different impact. And that's why it's so important for people. That, like I use cannabis recreationally for fun, but I also use it to help with certain things in my life, like mental health, and, doing some research on, specific terpenes, limonene, myrcene, caryophyllene have been known to help. And, not just saying, okay, I'm going to go get all these terpenes, but getting them and trying them and saying, okay, this does work for me, but this does not work for me, or vice versa, or whatever it is. So, the research into the plant is done by scientists, and it's done by us doing our own research with our own impact and own experience with the plant.
You're right. And you're the janitor holding the ring of keys to your own body skyscraper, and you're the only one that's going to be able to figure that out by actually trying each one. So that's the big key. That's a piece of the companies, the marketing and the branding and the LPs have not quite figured out yet, is that they think that just because one person has that a great experience, that everyone is going to have that great experience. And that just is never true with cannabis. So I feel that that's part of the problem, is that our understanding of the ECS system will unlock the industry much better than if we just look at the plant.
Indeed. All right, let's get to what it means to be green. And you're talking about certified Green E climate certifications.
Yeah, so this is actually, I use this example of a certified program, actually, because I'm quite respectful of it. This is a group that I actually did my accelerator program with, was the Decarbon app, and they've come out with not them, but they've joined group forces with a global thing around becoming Green E certified and climate certified. Well, what does that mean? Well, it kind of depends on where you are. So the answer to this is it's a logo. It's a logo that is trusted. It's trusted by their customers. It's trusted by other people that have gone through the process to get Green E certified. It's essentially some sort of process that, people have written down and recorded and followed and paid for. And then as a result of doing that process and having outcomes that measure the effects of that process, like measuring their, carbon offsets and measuring their wastewater and measuring their temperature control and how much money they spend. By measuring all of those things in that process, that's how they got the stamp of, Green E certified. They essentially paid for someone else to come in, a third party to come in and do that work with them. And that's how you get Green E certified. But this is exactly an example of every other kind of thing that's certified. And I just wanted to explain this because there's been quite a bit of, I'm going to say, multiple different perspectives on, let's say, for example, quality or organic or sustainable as they apply to the cannabis industry. And this is something I've been in many conversations with people around the globe on. And what they keep thinking is that, if we have this certification, then we all agree that that's the truth. And the answer is it does not work that way. And this quadrant is like, 5 by 5 boxes. These all mean the same thing. These are all organic certifications around the globe. Much of them are the same country. There's several from USA. Pretty sure there's not one on there from Canada. And that's indicative that other people around the world decide on a system, sell it for a bunch of money. Third-party people come in and evaluate that system is done properly, and they have a financial stake in the proof, right? So there's a little bit of a issue with that. And then they get that company that paid for that service gets these logos on their thing, and people trust that logo to mean something. But the consumer doesn't always look in to see what does that mean. And that's really the big part about certification, is especially in a new industry like we're in with cannabis, people can decide, we're going to make a certification that means X, and it's going to cost a producer or a company so many dollars to get Y, or the proof that they have that thing. But it's an added value that is only of value to the people that agree on it and trust in it. So this is an example of what I'm trying to say, is that there is no common thing around the world or even in Canada on what certification is. And this just hasn't been developed yet. We haven't built that trust. And for Canadians, we're all about standards and quality and trust in that. So I think that this is just an example of how we have a lot of work to do, and coming to agreement on these kinds of, things, and these kinds of codes of conduct and ethical guidelines, and what does it mean to be organic or sustainable or green, are up for debate and up for decision on who's going to buy into them. So it's just sort of a cautionary lens on that.
Yeah, we need as much transparency, particularly in this industry, as we can possibly get to, because there's already, as we've talked about a large stigma towards the cannabis space. If you want to find out how Malka can help you, jump online at www.greengencompany.com. Thanks so much, Malka. Enjoy the sunshine while it's out there and it melts all of our snow.
I hope so. Sounds good, Dean. Have a great day.
Check us out and follow us on social media at The Cannabis 101 on Twitter, at The Cannabis 101 Podcast on Instagram, and at The Canna 101 Podcast on Facebook. You can email us at cannabis101podcast@gmail.com.